Thank you to these sponsors of the Before I Die New Mexico Virtual Festival in 2020. A Good Goodbye, Gail Rubin puts the fun in funeral planning. After, a new way to stay connected with your loved ones in the cemetery anytime and anywhere. Aquamationinfo.com, where you can learn about alkaline hydrolysis, an eco-friendly alternative to flame cremation. Compassion and Choices, offering care and choice at the end of life. Daniel's Family Funerals and Cremations and Gabaldon Mortuary in Albuquerque. Fairview Memorial Park and Vista Verde Memorial Park in Albuquerque and Rio Rancho. Avista Cremation and Burial in Santa Fe. DeVargas Funeral Home and Crematory in Espanola and in Taos. Estate Pros, which offers personal dispersal of possessions due to a move, illness, or death. French Funerals and Cremations and Sunset Memorial Park in Albuquerque. And Keeper, which helps you keep memories alive with online tributes to preserve, celebrate, and share life legacies.
Death is full of surprises, huh?
You have no idea.
Yes, I am Gail Rubin, the doyen of death and the coordinator of the Before I Die New Mexico Virtual Festival. We are coming to you live or on video if you're watching this after the fact, and doing it all on Zoom because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So it's great to have you here for this session called Wonder Widows, and it is based on the book Wonder Widows, 3 grieving widows coming together to empower women to break the silence of widowhood. That would be Trish Comer. Wave Trish. Hello. Peggy Langenwalter and Jennifer Cox Horak. Yes, namaste. So to get this conversation started, Trish, why don't you start out and tell us your story of how you became a widow, and then Peggy and Jennifer.
Well, it seems like we you've been married a long time, like Bob and I were, 36 years. And then all of a sudden you go, my gosh, my husband's sick. My husband could be dying. But they didn't know what it was from. And it was just one of those things that was really strange. And 2.5 months through multiple blood tests, scans, all those things, he passed away. So I, went from racing 900 miles an hour, being a married woman, 36 years, to all of a sudden I was a widow one day, and it just worked out that way. But you don't plan on those things. You don't expect those things. And you always wonder who's going to go first, but you just never think it's going to be your spouse. I think that's what happens. But he was very sick and he was in ICU for 9 days. And again, an undiagnosed illness. And that's basically the way it ended. They think he may have had a very rare form of pancreatic cancer. So that's my basic story there of how I started off on my journey 6 years ago of being a widow.
Okay, Jennifer, what's your story?
Oh, I became a widow because he died. 3 months, he was doing fine. 3 months later, he was gone. Chuck also had pancreatic cancer. And it was quite a quick and devastating journey for us all. So I'm kind of tongue twisted. It's been 10 years for me. I'm coming up on my 10th anniversary, and the cynical part of me believed that he just didn't want the responsibilities of parenthood and marriage and said, I'm out of here. Lifestyle choices and interesting turn of events. And here we are.
And Peggy, What's your story?
You know, I think the farther we get away from that date of death, the shorter our story gets.
Yeah.
And I noticed that with Trish and Jennifer, and I feel the same way. It's the details aren't as quick to come to mind, but basically I was out of town with my business, teaching people how to be healthy and well. And back at home, my husband was on a ladder, but I think something caused him to fall off that ladder. And then the next thing I knew, I was getting a phone call saying he was in the hospital and it didn't look good. And so I got on the next flight, which was the next day, the next morning. And by the time I got back to Albuquerque, he was on a respirator long enough for us to get, for me to come home and for us to locate our son who was in the Navy at the time and get him home. And just in a matter of a day or two, we donated all his organs and he was gone.
Wow. Wow. Falling off a ladder is,
Yeah.
think about that.
He wasn't, when I say he fell off a ladder, I hesitate to say that because he wasn't reckless. He wasn't careless. He was very careful. So I think something might have happened on that ladder, which caused him to fall. And by the time he fell, it had done so much head damage that there was no hope of reviving him.
Before we proceed with our conversation further, I did want to note that we are recording this session and it will become available online on YouTube. So and as a meeting setting, if you don't want to be identified on the screen, if you're in the witness protection program, you can change your name in your ID box and keep your video turned off. So with that, how did you guys come together to make this book, Wonder Widows?
Well, I think what started, I'm kind of the middle person in a way here. I met Peggy through my daughter, Raina, because they are both neighbors, or were actually. And Raina thought it was a good idea that I start hooking up with some other widows. And of course, you know, we had briefly met before Bob passed away, but his illness was so quick.
Yeah.
You know, that by the time, you know, that Peggy and I got to know each other, Bob, you know, had already passed away. And so we started meeting. We go to a movie, and I think we stopped and had some tea and so forth. And the book concept came up between both of us. And it was something that I had always wanted to do as well. And because I didn't want to stay in a state of grief. I didn't want to be stuck in a state of grief. I knew my husband wanted me to move on, in a way, you know. I know that sounds kind of harsh, but I know he wanted me to be happy. He wanted me to find joy again. He wanted me to experience and open my heart up to love again. And I thought, you know, what better way than to get together with another widow, and it happened to be Jennifer. Jennifer and I were neighbors. And that worked out really well for us. Four of us knew each other. We were couples, you know, that got together on occasion, backyard barbecues or what have you. And I walked through Chuck's death. That's Jennifer's husband's name. You know, my husband and I went to the hospital a couple times. Jennifer and I would meet a couple times. Another one of our mutual neighbors, the one that lived between us, put us on a food schedule. So when Chuck came home from the hospital into hospice at their home, you know, we were making stews, salads, soups, you know, whatnot. You know, but I'll tell you what was interesting about that. We wanted Jennifer to join us. She had been our longest widow. We're all 2 years difference. You know, I'm 6, Peggy's 8, and then of course Jennifer's 10. But I never realized what it meant to be a widow. I never understood what a widow was going through until I became one myself. And that was the secondary reason for starting to write the book. We wanted people to understand what it was we were going through or had gone through, and our struggles, and our what our grief meant. So there could be a better and more supportive way to support us in the long run. So we're often a society that's lost about death and knowing what to do, what to say. And and it really wasn't until we were getting towards the end of writing the book when Peggy made the most brilliant remark. I'll always remember it, as we were sitting around her dining room table. It was the round table that we sat and had all of our conversations, which we transcribed into the book. And she says, what happens after the flowers stop coming and the meals stop coming and the cards stop coming in the mail? Then what? I mean, we're kind of numb and feeling foggy-headed as it is, during the very beginning stages. But then the real life starts. The reality of it sits in, and we are by ourselves. And we just feel so isolated, no matter how many people come to stay with us or visit with us. We still go to bed alone at night. And that was a big, big difference. So we hope, and that was our intent, was to write the book to inspire other widows to bring forth their story, and to, we hope that we can inspire them, to find the joy and love again in their lives as we have. And so that basically sums it up.
And to give, as you mentioned, Trish, and to give people who want to be part of the support team for a widow some insight so they know better how to help that woman who has just lost a spouse.
Right.
I like to call those that haven't experienced a death the uninitiated. And if you're uninitiated into the loss of a loved one, you have no idea what to feel, how to help another person who's in shock and deep grief. And that's what I wanted to participate, why I wanted to participate in the book, is to let others know, because I was pretty young. I was 39 when Chuck passed away. And our journey connected me with many young women from the ages of 20 to 90. So widowhood doesn't just come for the elders. It comes for all of us at any time. And that's an important thing to know, because, somebody between the ages of 15 and let's say 55 or 65 may not have experienced a friend losing a partner. And that was my case. Nobody knew what to do or what to say or how to express their concern and care for us. And I think this book really was profound for me in that I could express the things I couldn't say or didn't even know I needed to bring this awareness to others so they have an understanding, even though it is from, a perspective of us. It's at least a bit of a tool guide, I guess.
Right.
And so let's talk about some of this. I mean, you cover a lot of great information in this book. We talked about maybe the idea of how do we tackle anniversaries and holidays when someone we love is missing from our physical presence. Talk a little bit about what you've put in the book about that particular aspect.
I think we've all had very similar experiences, which I wouldn't be surprised if most of us widows and widowers too, had experienced. So the first year especially is the most difficult. And believe it or not, it gets a little easier the second year, maybe, but I think I'm just going to go briefly through that myself and my own experience. And then I'll let the other two women talk about their experiences. Bob passed away in August of 2014. And I knew his birthday was the first thing coming up in September. Thanksgiving followed. And of course, I don't know why it was designed that way, but we seem to have Thanksgiving and then boom, a month later, you've got Christmas. And I'll tell you the truth, I wasn't looking for any of that, looking forward to any of it. So I planned Bob's celebration of life on his birthday or right near it. It kept me busy enough, and that seemed to help. The second one was Thanksgiving, which was at my daughter's house. And that I did great until I got home. I pulled up in the driveway, opened the door, walked out of my car, and went, oh my God, somebody is grilling a turkey. That was Bob's hallmark. He always loved to grill a turkey on Thanksgiving. And I kind of fell apart until I ran and dashed into the house and sat there for a while. I remember that going, oh my God, I made it through the day. I was at the finish line, and yet this happened. But there are triggers that do occur, of course, along the way. And then the third was Christmas. And that's when I planned to take the family, all the grandkids that I had at that time, to the Polar Express up in Durango to have, Christmas in a different way that year. And I think the funny part about that story was a very good friend of my daughter's heard that I didn't want to put up a Christmas tree. And I just wasn't in the mood. Nobody wanted to come over. They were avoiding their house that they grew up, my kids, and it was just too many sad memories. So anyway, I came home one day and I found this box lying on my porch. And I thought, what in the world? And I looked inside and I thought, oh my God, it's a Christmas tree. And it was all put together. All I had to do was stand it up and brush up these tin looking fake fur, whatever you call it. And then I plugged it in, and it's one of those fiber optic trees. And the funny thing is, Bob always wanted a fiber optic tree for the front yard, like right at the door, one of those 3-foot ones. And I forbade him from getting one of those. And I says, oh, no. And no offense to anybody who likes fiber optic, I'm just an old traditionalist. And I always said, no, we can't have that. And so naturally, when I plugged it in and saw it was a fiber optic tree, all I could do was sit there and laugh. And I thought, Bob, for God's sakes, I can't believe you did this to me. And I'm sure he was laughing right along with me.
Well,
Peggy, you want to go on in there?
Well, I wanted to interject there, though, that maybe that guy who was grilling the turkey, it was a message that Bob was sending to you, just hello from heaven.
Oh, it probably was. I just didn't want anything to do with it. I was mad he was gone at that time in my life.
Yeah.
Mad he wasn't with our family at the holiday. And being angry is a natural thing. It shouldn't be something that a widow or a widower feels guilty about feeling. It's very normal.
I think at the holidays, one thing that's important to remember is you can do it any way you want. If a person gets comfort from doing the same traditions that have been done for years, do it. If that doesn't feel comfortable, do something else or don't do anything at all. You can make new rules, and it doesn't hurt to say, this year I'm going to take a vacation from the holidays and bringing all the decorations out and putting them back by myself. So I think it becomes a balance of hanging on to long held traditions and coming up with some new way to celebrate.
Where I'm stuck with the participation of Santa Claus and all the traditions that Chuck would have wanted, because my son was 4 and I was pregnant with our daughter when Chuck passed. So I was thrown into, oh, guess what? You don't get to grieve. Our first Christmas without him was complete and utter shock. I don't remember it. The second Christmas, I just put a tree up and opened the box of decorations and let my kids do whatever they wanted to it, which was somewhat entertaining because, most women are very obsessive about the way the tree's decorated. So I think that's now become our tradition. Here are the ornaments. Throw them wherever you want. I put the lights on and we just stick stuff anywhere it goes.
So all very different approaches there. Let's talk a little bit about grief and brain fog. And during this pandemic time, there's a lot of grief of the loss of our normal lives. And I think it parallels very often the grief that we feel when a loved one dies. How did you deal with that?
And I distinctly remember telling several people back in March, oh my gosh, this feels exactly like the night Chuck was diagnosed with cancer. We're just being told that this is terminal and everything's going to change soon. We just don't know when, because we're all awaiting the death of what we've known. And very much feels like that first couple weeks with Chuck in the hospital. And I think we're all on hospice care now. It feels like we're all on hospice care now. We're just waiting for this final moment to complete its cycle so we can begin a rebirth.
Yeah, and as far as brain fog, yeah, there may be a lot of people experiencing it now due to the changes we've gone through that we're experiencing now. And if a person's faced with that, I think one of the things, or some of the things that we all learned, was that it can be helpful to keep notebooks, write lists. If you're going to be doing some kind of serious negotiating, then have someone that you trust present. So there's another set of eyes, ears, and another brain to help sort through the details. And I think it's real important to realize that it's exhausting to go through grief and a pandemic. So it's important. Yeah, it's a lot of trauma. So it's important to take the time to rest, to realize that it takes a lot of energy to move through a day when there has been trauma.
I agree. I think both Jennifer and Peggy hit on some very important information there, or suggestions. I think it's also good to connect to nature. Yes. I think that's what helped all of us in certain ways, in our own unique ways. I just grew to love being outside.
Yes.
It was just freeing, and it smelled good. And it just felt I felt connected, where brain fog, I felt disconnected. I often remember my daughter saying, "Mom, you've already told me that story." And it got to the point I was like, oh my God, I know I'm older in the first place. So I'm thinking, am I just aging? Is this like that process of forgetfulness, as we develop dementia, or, one of those things? And that just exasperates it in the first place. It just made it worse. But I felt like my greatest help was to be outside in nature. It really made a difference for me, and I'm sure that would make a difference for anybody who is experiencing the pandemic trauma, as well as losing a spouse or a loved one in general. And that's also very, very important, because we know that this is an isolating time as well. This is not the best time to be going through grief, of losing a spouse. There's no good time, of course, but I think this just makes it harder, and I think we can relate to that difficulty and challenge, that comes to living by yourself, or having to isolate by yourself. So I still would recommend, going out for a lot of walks if you can.
Exactly. I did that this morning.
Good.
And really, we've sort of transitioned over into self-care. Are there other self-care tips you might want to suggest?
Eat.
I think one of the best things I did was, I think it was 3 years ago. So about 5 years after Dan died, I was invited by a friend to join her on a trip to South Africa. And in a way, it felt like I felt vulnerable still. I didn't have my protector. I didn't have my buffer to the world, to the rough edges of life. But I decided to go, and it was a best thing I ever did. It totally changed my environment. It gave me new people to talk to. I was out in nature. We were on a photo safari. And I look back on that with great memories, and I pat myself on the back for having gone.
I had to challenge myself. I really had to face my fear of that vulnerability and challenge myself to where I said, if somebody invites me anywhere, I will go because they love me enough to help me feel safe. Now, sometimes it took me a long time to get there. As long as I felt that I was open and honest about my anxiety and my fear and that social awkwardness of being the only woman in a sea of couples,
Yes.
then I felt I could find at least one other person that would support me. And being around others also meant I had other people to play and talk to my children, and that made a huge difference. So I really challenged myself. I didn't always make it, but most of the time I did. If somebody asked me, that was my challenge, that no matter what intensity my panic attacks were, what fears I had, that I was strong enough to face them because I had already faced Chuck's death. I had already faced birthing my baby alone, that nothing else could challenge me as much as those 2 moments did. And so I step through those doors. Every time I get afraid, I know I can step through the door and it's not as bad as I ever thought it would be.
I think for me, my self-care had more to do with setting an intent and realizing how the importance of taking care of myself was. You know, I mean, there for a long time, I didn't care what I ate. I didn't care what I was doing. I didn't really care. You know, it came right down to it. You know, my number one person in my life, you know, and my 2 grown children, their own families. So my number one person in life was gone, you know, and self-care, and I relate to what you just said, Jennifer. You know, I had to put myself into that position. I had to almost force myself to start taking a second look. I started getting chiropractic work. That was important to me. I felt like I was storing, you know, a lot of that stress inside of me. So I started going for adjustments, you know. I started eating more nutritionally. I mean, not that I was ever bad to begin with, really. But I stepped it up, you know, and then also I'm a Reiki practitioner and teacher, you know, and so I practice a lot of that on myself as well. And that seemed to make a big difference for me because I could do that in the bed. I could do that, you know, watching TV, you know, whatever scene or setting I was in. I mean, I can always just do this and I'm giving myself Reiki. So that was a big, big plus for me. And so I felt like I had to keep up my spiritual practice as well. That was also of very utmost importance to me.
You have a chapter in your book called Looking at the Bright Side of Being a Widow. What did you find that was a bright side of being a widow?
I can do whatever I want without argument.
Exactly what I was just gonna say. It's your choice, baby.
It's your timing. Yeah.
You can watch whatever channel you want to watch on TV. You can pick the movie you want to see. I redecorated my house the way I wanted it, not the way we would want it.
Yes.
You know, yeah, I mean, it's a different way of looking at it. And I know we make light of death in this case, but it is your life now. You know, it is your life. And you get to choose, you know, what it is you want to do. You know, whether you want to change your diet now, you know, and start taking care of yourself, because that is self-care. You know, whatever you decide to put in your body, you know, so there's some real positive things.
It's a double-edged sword because on one hand, it's nice to be able to make decisions and have things the way you want, but you also kind of miss that feedback and the balance of another person you trust saying, well, let's look at it this way. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and we just do our darndest to look at the bright side and find the silver lining and,
Right.
you know, take another step forward and turn our face to the sun. It sometimes is easier than other times.
Because I now find myself asking other people to make decisions. Like, where do you want to go eat? It's like, no, that's your decision. I make enough decisions on my own. You make that one. I'm done.
How true, how true.
So each of you have been widowed for different periods of time, but how do you look at the process of creating a new identity and the time that it takes and the distance from the death?
That's an interesting question, yes, because I think
Still
we
doing it.
very uniquely have taken that, you know, that we've had this discussion, in other words, because that's why it's in the book.
Yes.
And I found that we all had very different ways of approaching it. And speaking for myself again, you know, I had to separate the knots or the skeins of the silk skeins, I should say. I had to separate those out. I had to decide, who am I minus now my husband? That's not always an easy task, but I spent a great deal of time deciding where we overlapped, and we overlapped in a lot more places than I was aware of until after he passed. And that is the part that I had to re-identify my innate nature, meaning the nature that I came into this world with and will undoubtedly leave with. That's our innate nature. It's our natural selves. Because we take on so many personality traits, or we mesh our personality traits with our spouses. But when they're gone, you feel like you're just kind of standing there hanging in the balance and going, who the hell am I now? You know, but the thing is that that's where we have choice coming in. And again, it's not an easy task, but we've all made our own concerted efforts in order to identify who we are as this new person. You know, taking away some of the stuff that no longer belonged, just like cleaning out a clothes closet, you know, in my life. But on the other hand, hey, there's a couple of really swanky coats that are still hanging in that closet. And that's just up to me to identify what those parts are, you know, that I want to keep, and which parts I don't need any longer.
It's a position that we get forced into, of course, when we're no longer we. It was, you know, I had been married to Dan for 42 years, and I was so accustomed to saying we and our, that it was very difficult to drop that and start saying I or my. So that was one change I noticed in the beginning. You know, I would say, do you want to come over to our house? And I thought, oh, it's not our house anymore. It's my house. Little things like that. But also, like Trish said, you know, it's a whole different way of making decisions and realizing what really matters now and what doesn't.
I feel very fortunate in that we both had very much independent lives and came together and shared them in the evenings. And I miss that. I miss having somebody to, what'd you do today? This is what I did today. And yeah, it's fascinating. I still don't know who I am. I do know that I have filled the part of my heart that was taken with him with flowers and thorns and herbs and children's drawings, and I place it all there in my heart in hopes that, or fantasy that somehow or another that he's there with the ancestors now that he's a part of them, sharing still with me.
Now, did all of you have children?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. How has your relationship with your kids changed over the course of this process?
Well,
Mine don't know any better. I'm fortunate. Mine don't know any better. This is just their life. It's the way it is.
It was difficult for my children to lose their dad, because it happened so quickly. And, there's no time to process. Then again, I don't know if you ever have adequate time to process. I think death comes with a lot of strange emotions anyway that you never would have expected to have or would have guessed you would have had. They just are there. So yes, my son, who was my youngest, he had just had a new baby about 3 weeks before Bob passed. So he was adjusting to a new baby, and this was the fourth child in the family. And so he was adjusting to that as well as adjusting to his father passing. Very, very difficult time for him. And my daughter had just gone through a miscarriage the day he did die. So she never got to say goodbye. So that was very difficult. And in a way, I felt like I needed to fill in for Bob, after he was gone. I felt like I tried to be the father and the mother. And I know Jennifer, actually gets the award of the year for this, not me. But I did try, and that was the interesting thing in the beginning. I have a friend who just recently became a widow. And I noticed that she was trying to do a lot for her 3 kids, her grown children. And of course, I don't ever interject and give any advice on that, because everybody does it differently, but she was trying so hard, to fill her husband's shoes, the role he played with the children, while he was around, and I just wanted to stand in the background and whisper in her ear, don't try so hard. Because we don't know. This is a part of that lack of identity. Now we're trying to play mom and dad, so at least trying, I should say. And I don't think I was ever that successful with it. I finally learned to I needed personally just to let go of that, let the relationship evolve with my children in a new way, in a different way. It was never going to be the same.
I have, Dan and I had 3 sons, and they were all young men, and they were all very close to Dan and talked to him often and about many things. I know they felt a big loss with him. I do feel that through the years since Dan's been gone, all 3 of the sons, I feel, are like we have a closer relationship even. It's just deepened. And we always had a good relationship before. But I think it's gotten even deeper. And one son just had a baby. So I know he's missing showing his baby to his dad, but, and pandemic allowing, I'll be up there as soon as I can to see the baby. They don't live in this state.
So, yes.
I was just going to say, it is a family dynamic shift.
Yeah.
And it's not just with our own children, but it's with our extended family as well.
Mm-hmm.
It affects everybody. It really does.
We do have the opportunity to engage in conversations with our Wonder Widows here. If anybody does want to ask a question or add a comment. I have to say this book is a great resource for women and I guess men too, if they find themselves as wonder widowers.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it can be purchased on Amazon.
And Gail, in the back of the book, as you probably have seen, we created a couple lists that are very helpful for people, even if they don't read through the book at first. If they flip to the back and look through those lists, whether it's the person herself or himself going through the loss of a partner, or if it's part of the support team. I think those lists can be very helpful. And one of the big things is to remind people that it does take a lot of energy to face a big change in life, and to be gentle with oneself, and to take time to rest and look for activities that bring some happiness.
I agree.
Yeah. So, yeah, any last pieces of advice you might want to share with our audience?
Well, I think we can all agree, do it your way.
Yes.
Do what works for you. And that was the nice thing about the three of us getting together. We saw a lot of similarities in the way we were facing certain situations and challenges, but we also saw that we did things a little bit differently, because we are all different. Our life stories were different, our relationships were different with our spouse, and so forth. So yeah, take a few hints if you want to from the book, from our experiences, and then do it your way.
And don't be afraid to allow other people to earn their blessings. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to receive help. That pride that a lot of us are conditioned with kind of holds us back. Oh no, I have to do this myself. We're not meant to do anything alone. Don't.
One big point too is, I think every one of us felt at first when we were talking about brain fog, I think we all had a moment where we thought, am I crazy? Like Trish said, she thought maybe she was just getting old. But let's assure people, you're not crazy. You're just facing a big challenge.
Yes, and it is, and it should be also worth mentioning that brain fog is our brain's way of trying to soften the blow of so much stress and trauma. So we do get fuzzy-headed. It's very similar to the effects of chemotherapy, as it's been told. Bless Peggy's heart for explaining all that to me. It was a great relief. Trust me. I thought, wow, I am actually not losing my mind after all. So, but no, that is exactly what is happening. It's an overload of stress. And so the brain tries to buffer that a little bit and shut down, and you do feel a little on the foggy side, but it's temporary, as temporary as you allow it to be, of course. We're not going to sit here and say how long it takes for you to grieve or how long you should be grieving, grieving, whether you should have brain fog for a month or if you should have brain fog for a year. I mean, everybody's going to be different.
There
and that is
shoulds. Right. No shoulds, no hard and fast ways of doing it. Take some of the tools that you might find in the book, and again, figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
We also
10 years in, it doesn't always, it comes in waves. Grief never really leaves you. It never leaves. It just is something you learn to take on as a new part of your new you.
And to walk beside.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that we discussed, Gail, around the table was grief is not linear. We don't get on a trajectory and keep going up. It goes back and forth and up and down, and we never know what moment we're going to be triggered by a smell, a sound, a taste, a word somebody says, or somebody who's driving a vehicle, just like my husband,
the grilled turkey.
The what?
The grilled turkey.
Yeah, the grilled turkey. So be prepared. I have found through the years that when I start to experience this strange feeling of melancholy, and I'm not usually a person who experiences that, but all of a sudden I'll stop and I'll say, what is it? Why can I not shake this feeling? And then I figure out the date, and it was a significant date, either in our lives together, or, for example, it could have been Dan's birthday, or it's coming up on his birthday, or it's coming up on our anniversary, or the day he died.
Yeah, the body and the mind are in cahoots together to make sure we remember.
Yeah.
However, I will say this. I was in a meeting sometime maybe over 8 months ago now, because I haven't gone much
Right.
where else. But somebody asked me the day Bob passed away, and I actually forgot.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I was sitting there with a grief therapist at the time. And she looked over at me and she says, you know, that's a major triumph. And I thought, oh, you know, because my first thought were, oh no, you know, I mean, how could this be? How could I forget? I mean, it was such a big date in my life, you know, but I was going August 24th, 3rd, no, wait, August 20, no, yeah, I think it was August 21st, 2014. I mean, I remembered the year. I didn't forget that because my whole life changed in that year. But I actually did. So what I'm saying is it's a normal thing to also, you know, you want to grow and reach new states of happiness. You know, it is really a time in our lives, you know, when we can push forward in a different way because we're creating new memories.
Right.
You know, we're learning to love a different way. You know, we're learning to expand our field of love. You know, where we may have put that love right there, smack dab in our husband's hearts, you know, from our heart to theirs.
Another thing we all said when we were sitting around the table was, my husband died. I didn't.
Yes.
I'm still here. I still get to experience love and joy and our children and how good it tastes to eat something I enjoy. You know, wherever we can find the happiness and the joy, we get to do that because we're still here.
This is a very good point. And that's when I started keeping a gratitude journal. And I wrote down something every single day that I was thankful for. And I'll tell you, hey, it got slim picking sometimes. I would say, well, you know, I'm alive.
I'm breathing.
I have gratitude that I live in a state that has over 360 days of sunshine. Yeah. And every single day it was sunny, I would notate, thank you. I am grateful for that and feel the gratefulness. You know, so that was a great tool, pardon me, that I use quite often that really did set the tone for a better day. But as Peggy said, you know, we go through, it's not a straight line. You never know. I mean, I made it through 4 years. No, three, 7, 3. I made it through 3-year anniversaries, our wedding anniversary, and I did fine. I mean, well, you know, that's all a matter of perspective, of course, but I felt I did pretty well. And it was on the 4th year, I totally fell apart. I mean, that was the most amazing thing that happened to me 4 years later. But and that's, I just wanted to emphasize that what Peggy was saying about them, because I think that's a real important factor because, you know, every once in a while we wonder where we're at. Are we going backwards again? You know, but no, you're really not, you know, because it is an opportunity to create new memories and have a fresh start again. And you can have as many fresh starts as you need, you know, over and over, start again, just get up. There's no right or wrong way. And there's no time expiration on any of this. But realize that, you know, the Wonder Widows are here for you too, you know, and I think that's something else that we should emphasize as well. We do have a Facebook page, but I think we gave up our website, but we do have a Facebook page still. And that's a place where we can all meet. We can discuss things as they come up, or if you have a question. You know, that's the important thing, is to create that own community of people that understand, and always invite people who are, what did you call it, Jennifer?
Uninitiated.
There you go. Uninitiated. I like that. That's the first time I've heard you use that. I like it a lot. So I think that's what we should do, you know, or you should do, you know, or could do, you know, invite some of those people, you know, with you to be your support and learn, so they can learn how to be supportive of you as well.
And so you've got your Facebook page. Somebody would just search for Wonder Widows at
The Wonder Widows.
wonderwidows.com
Facebook, right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the back of the book.
Ah, okay. And this is the book.
And there's the back of the book.
And here's the back of the book. And it is facebook.com/The Wonder Widows. I
Okay.
always have to go get it, look at it to make sure I have it the right way. But yes, it is.
Great book with great information. And if sometime in the future, when we're able to meet in person again, you have been holding monthly gatherings, encouraging people.
Yes.
Assuming we get to do that again, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Gail was invited. And I think you were to appear
Right.
in March.
In March.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I thought, no, this isn't going well. So we've discontinued the meetings, which is unfortunate because it's a support group type meeting. And we had various topics we covered all the time. You know, some of them were about finances. Some of them was about grief itself. And we had that grief therapist with us. And she is also a member of our group now. You know, and because she too is a widow. But we cover all different things. And in the summertime, we were doing field trips, you know, going places together, having picnics, you know, whatever, you know, there was just a bunch of things that we were doing together. And it was a lot of fun. We, you know, lunch on a patio and a real nice, you know, winery, bistro and so forth. But anyway, those are the kind of things that we were doing, you know, and I'd like to be able to get back and do those again. But, you know, I mean, life obviously is sort of still a curve, you know, and we'll just have to wait and see.
One of the nice things about our gatherings when we were having them is that we knew that we could cry if we wanted to, if we felt like it. We could also laugh, and there would be no judgment for the crying or the laughing. And we were just very supportive with each other.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. Mm-hmm.
Do you think this would translate into what we're doing here in a Zoom format?
I don't know. We've talked about it a little bit, but
yeah, I don't know
It's
either.
been
really.
requested a few times, more in the beginning than now.
Right. I did make the announcement to our Wonder Widow group, you know, about before I die, you know, of course. And I'm hoping some of them did sign up. However, I know they know about us pretty well, you know, but I do hope they took advantage of that. It's so hard to say right now with where everybody's at. Personally, I'm writing my second book. So the quarantine has been a really positive thing for me. So it's kept my butt at home and it's kept me on track. You know, it's a manuscript and I had started probably back, I'd finished it back in 2007. So the pandemic has really made me stay at home and tidy up this book and get it published. So that's what I've been working on.
less distractions. In a way, I have appreciated the slowdown.
I have most definitely appreciated the slowdown. I just keep looking forward to the energetic, upbeat thing to happen. And for the first time in 10 years, I've had an opportunity to get rid of Chuck's stuff that I haven't had a chance to do since he's passed away.
Oh, you did?
Well, you know, he had a lot of stuff, so I'm still getting rid of it.
No, that's good. That's good. Right. Yeah, that was another approach that we took. I know you're trying to wrap up here, but real quick, like we all had a different way of approaching hanging on to certain things of our spouse versus getting rid of them. Me, I could not wait to get rid of the clothes in the closet, the toiletries in the vanity and so forth, because every time I looked there they were, you know, I mean, that bugged me. I mean, you know, talk about a trigger, you know, that did it for me. And I needed to get dressed every day. So there they were. I needed to brush my teeth every day. There was a toothbrush and toothpaste of his, you know, so, but I think the other two did a little more gradual than I did. But again, there's no right or wrong way.
Yeah, I know when my father-in-law died, my mother-in-law, I was surprised how quickly she started like getting rid of the extra underwear and socks and clothing and all the food that he liked. And but you know, we all react, as you say, differently.
That's right.
Yes, the best thing to do is not to pass judgment.
That's right.
And I am not kidding.
on ourselves even.
Yes.
Yes, big point.
Be gentle with ourselves. You know, we're trying to navigate something we've never done before. And it can be tough, and we don't need to be criticizing ourselves even, just doing the best we can, focusing where we can.
I'd like to see society take a big leap. And Gail, I know you're playing your part, you're doing your thing with that. And I think that's wonderful, because we need to start to understand death better.
We need to reconnect.
And stop fearing it. Yes, definitely. Reconnect.
None of us get out of here alive.
Well, also, Trish, along with that, not fearing those who are experiencing the loss of someone.
That is so right. That is so right.
It's so easy. Several friends asked me, well, you know, when I had said, you know, it's some of the comments that were made at some comments that are made at funerals can be damaging, and the person has no intention of causing a wound. And so some of my friends said, well, what is a good thing to say? And it was only about 3 or 4 years after Dana died. And I said, you know, I'm still trying to figure that out too. And I've been on this end of it. So it's kind of a difficult thing. There's no absolute, you know, I can tell you the words that are going to help for sure. We do make some, I think, some suggestions in the book, but there again, just to be sensitive and just to say, I love you, I'm here for you. You know, I want to offer help, and rather than leave it on the widow's shoulders, rather than saying, call me if you need anything, you know, that puts another burden on the grieving person's shoulders. So it's a little more helpful to say, hey, I have every other Saturday off. I will be at your door. Give me your list of things that you want me to do, for example.
Right. I think Jennifer had a really good handle on that too at the time. You know, I loved it. Now, Jennifer, you know, I'm paraphrasing you, but I loved it when you were talking like, yeah, you just come on in my house. You go ahead and do my laundry. Go ahead, you know, mop up the floor or clean a bathroom. You don't have to ask permission. You know, I loved it. Yeah. And I thought, God, I wish I could have done that too. You know, I had neighbors.
You don't even ask for permission. Just if you see it, do it.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. So, Gail, I think your audience can see that us three coming together, you know, has been a blessing for all of us. You know, and we do get to share. And even though we've been separated for so many months now, and this is the first time the three of us have actually sat together in months, you know, and we still appreciate each other, I can tell.
Yep.
Well, that is great. Trish Comer, Peggy Langenwalter, and Jennifer Cox Horak. The book is Wonder Widows. I hope you'll check it out. And I appreciate you coming on and being on this Before I Die New Mexico Virtual Festival session.